Well, it looks like this particular dark romance trope is officially dead. What do you want to call it? Dirty dad, daddy dom, little girl. Basically age play. It has been made illegal in Australia. If you're one of my wonderful 9 subscribers, you know that I've been following this case very, very closely. The case of Tori Woods, aka Lauren Tessolin-Mastrosa. As I predicted, she has been found guilty on all 3 counts, which was production, possession and dissemination of child sexual abuse material. And you better get comfortable because there is a lot to go over. The words that were actually used during the verdict changes everything for this particular trope in Australia, and it's going to have a lot of knock-on effects for authors everywhere as well. And I'm going to go into that. I'm going to go into how it affects the whole indie scene. And yeah, the first thing I want to do though is I want to discuss the conviction, the comments made by the judge, which is what changes the game completely. And I want to talk a little bit as well about what kind of sentence she might be looking at and why. And there's also been some information, just, trigger warning, I guess, but since we need to do that these days, there has been more information that has come out about this book, this daddy's little toy that she wrote, which makes it so much worse than we initially thought it was. Like, just get comfortable, this is going to be one hell of a video. The magistrate, that's the judge, Bree Crisholm, described the book as undeniably offensive and found that it sexually objectified children, inviting the reader to imagine sexual activity between an adult and a young child, the very acts that child abuse legislation is designed to prohibit. And just FYI, why this is landing so much harder, it isn't just about the male main character's fantasies about the female lead when she was a toddler anymore. While any actual sexual acts happened when the female main character was over 18, apparently she only had the mental faculties of a child. So, and I mean like requiring nappies, throwing tantrums, requiring bathing, among other things. So not only does the story involve the sexualization or sexualized fantasies of a child, it technically involves the rape of an adult who doesn't have the cognitive capabilities to consent to these acts. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, right? No. Tessolin-Mastrosa has not yet been sentenced. She's currently still on conditional bail. The sentencing, that's going to happen, I believe it was April, but I'll keep you updated on that. I've got a kind of half decent idea of how it's going to go anyway, and I'll explain exactly why. Now, the maximum she could face under the law is, I think, around 15 years, or 15 years plus. But that's not going to be the case for a number of factors. First of all, it didn't go to the district court. It stayed in the local court of Blacktown. And the sentencing guidelines for a local court are different than from a district or federal court. In a local court, the sentencing for a single offence is capped at 2 years. And for aggregate offences, which means a combination of offences, it's capped at 5 years. Will she receive the 5 years? Probably not. And that's because there's things that go in her favour that sort of mitigate that. For a start, she has no prior record, which she's a first time offender, essentially. which shows that she's of good character, allegedly, despite the things that she wrote about. What else? She complied at every stage of the investigation and complied with bail conditions. This again all goes in her favour. And this is the one we could look at that might go two different ways depending on how the judge looks at it. And that is limited dissemination. Only 21 copies were sent out to readers. Now again, you can look at that two ways. Oh, only 21 copies were sent out, or she disseminated it 21 times. So, depends how the judge is going to look at that. But my guess, based on my knowledge of the Australian legal system, is that the maximum, she's maybe looking at 4 years, serving maybe just under 2. But I suspect that she's going to get the lower end of the sentencing, maybe around 1 or 2 years, and potentially get out in 6 to 8 months. They might also take into account the time it's took in the trial as well. That could also go under time served, which is a different issue. If you want me to explain how that works, I'll do that as well. I'll just add that on to the video that I make when our sentencing comes around. Given the nature of the crimes, I can almost guarantee she's going to get a custodial sentence. I don't think it's going to be a case of she's going to be able to serve her sentence in the community, because this is a landmark case. It's the first of its kind. They're really going to be looking to make an example of her, but they're limited with how much of an example they can make of her, because she's not a repeat offender. This is her first time getting into trouble, essentially. And they might also take into account the fact that she's lost her career. She's the public shaming that she's taken, that's a sort of kind of punishment in itself. You know, there's a lot of things. I think she's going to get the lower end of the sentence. Now, whether you agree with that or whether I agree with that doesn't really matter. That's just how the law works. So, why is the whole age play thing now illegal? It's because of the words that the judge said, the magistrate said during the verdict. And I've got it all here, and I'm going to be reading off the screen just to try and make sure that I don't make any mistakes. The magistrate said, "The reader is left with a description that creates the visual image in one's mind of an adult male engaging in sexual activity with a young child." She also pointed out the repeated conditioning of this fantasy, stating, "The descriptions and language such as infant-like behaviour during sex were not isolated incidents, but were repeated again and again to cement the character's childlike state," which was the cognitive issues that I mentioned previously. The book invited the reader to imagine the very thing that child abuse legislation prohibited. Saying that the characters essentially were over 18 was not a get out of jail free card in this instance. The magistrate said that saying a character is 18 means nothing if you describe them as a toddler, citing specific examples such as needing to be bathed, throwing tantrums, wearing nappies and using baby talk. So, yeah, that entire age play trope is now officially illegal in Australia because the precedent has now been set. So how does this affect readers and writers of dark romance? Well, if you live in Australia, you can wave goodbye to any age play trope. That is now a no-go. And I know there's going to be Americans that are currently laughing and pointing out that they're protected by the First Amendment. And yes, while that may be true, you have still essentially lost all of your Australian readership. Because if an Australian reader now was to buy anything that involved any of the behaviours that I just mentioned, I mean even just role-playing as a child, they will then be in possession of child abuse material under Australian law. I mean, if you live in Australia and you have any of these books already on your Kindle or anything like that, it might be time to hit delete on those titles. Because it doesn't matter if the character is 18, if they behave like a child. And that's where we're at. That's where we're standing with this. And I'm interested to know what you guys think of it. What's your take? Do you think maybe they've come down too hard on her? Do you think they were right? Because, I mean, at every stage of the book, as far as I can tell, based on what I've read, the female main character is a vulnerable person who at no stage can consent. It begins when she's a child, although obviously it's just descriptions of the sexual fantasies that the male main character is having, which is fucking weird enough in its own. But even when she's an adult, she's not a well adult. She can't consent to the acts. I mean, it sounds to me like rape. That's how it sounds to me. But what do you guys think? What's your take on all this? Anyway, let me know in the comments, and yeah, just what else can I say? Have a good one, guys. I'll speak to you again soon.